The 2024 NFL Draft has concluded, and for the first time in my channel's history, we are going to be doing a way too early mock draft. I will be eager to dive back in a year from now just to see how much everything has changed from the time that I record this in May of 2024 to the very end of April in 2025. A couple things to note: this is not my draft order. I think this is based on the reverse Super Bowl favorite odds. So Carolina apparently is 32nd. They're the least favorite to win the Super Bowl. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in here. Now, with Carolina on the clock, believe it or not, I think Bryce Young actually has sufficient help, and we're going to be reviewing this 1 year from now. So hopefully that holds up, and hopefully Bryce has a good second season. But they just traded Brian Burns to the Giants, and James Pierce Jr. right now is an absolute animal for Tennessee. He's 6'5", 240. He doesn't have a lot of refinement in terms of his pass rush moves, and for him to be able to win almost on athleticism alone in the SEC is extremely impressive. And just a training camp of NFL coaching, and for him to really, get seasoned would do him wonders, and I am eager to see how he does in 2024. Now, with the Patriots and Drake May and Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, I think they had a solid rookie season. Now, I don't think they had a CJ Stroud level rookie year. I don't think they, won 12 games or anything crazy, or even won a playoff game, but I think they showed flashes. But one thing that concerns me with the Patriots is the offensive line play outside of Mike Onwenu, of course. So we're going to go ahead and draft the presumable tackle of the future, which would be Will Campbell. Now, if the Patriots go Will Campbell, who, by the way, was credited with allowing 0 sacks last year, the Patriots would have a lot of players on their rookie contracts. They'd, of course, have Drake. They would have Will Campbell. They'd have both receivers in Baker and Polk. And I think they would look pretty solid moving forward. And I don't think the Patriots situation, all around is that bad. The defense is obviously really good. The offense, they have to, get way better. I think they did a good job of attacking that in the 24 draft, but I think with their first pick in the 25 draft, a franchise left tackle would really do them justice. Now, this might come as a little bit of a surprise here, but we are going to have a trade here, and it's going to be the New York Giants trading up for quarterback Carson Beck. Carson, really good quarterback for Georgia, had a completion percentage of over 72% last year, and when you factor in, drops and throwaways and spikes, he had an adjusted completion percentage of over 80% in 2023. I think Carson would have been in the conversation for, QB4, QB5, QB6 had he came out this year, and with 6 quarterbacks going in the top 12, and with the Raiders rumored to have been trying to trade up for Michael Penix, I definitely think Carson Beck would have been a first-round pick this year. So the quarterback class next year, at least at this point in time, is not what this year's class was. This next year's class is going to be way more defensive-centric, where this year's class was more offensive-centric. It's going to be kind of the opposite next year. But with the Titans at pick 4, here's a player that I really would love for them to go, at least at this point in time, and it's Texas tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. Look, if the Titans get Kelvin Banks, we could be talking about an offense with Kelvin on the left side, Peter Skoronski at left guard, Lloyd Cushenberry at center, and then we could just slide J.C. Latham back to right tackle. Now, I know you may be thinking, why would they do that? Why would they move a tackle that they just drafted at number 7 overall back to the right side? I really don't think, especially for younger guys, that it's that big of a transition. There were a lot of talks about the Cardinals moving Paris Johnson from left tackle to right, or from moving him from right tackle back to left tackle, which he played during his final year at Ohio State in 2022. But I do think Latham is more of a natural right tackle. So if the Titans had this offensive line, I think it would look pretty good. And I know their receiving unit could certainly use some help, but if you can have 4 of 5 starters on your offensive line be solid, really for the next 2-3 years, I think Tennessee would be really smart to add Kelvin at number 4 overall. Now, with the Broncos on the clock, there is a very strong case to go with defensive lineman Mason Graham. And you wouldn't get any pushback from me if you wanted to go with Mason Graham here. But where we are going to go is with Luther Burden III from Missouri. Luther, at times in 2023, absolutely took over games. He had over 700 yards after the catch. And my thought process with this selection is to help out Bo Nix as much as we can. Now, the Broncos, just being honest, they have a long way to get to the top. They have a long way to, go from where they are to beating the Chiefs, beating the Chargers, and they're in a tough position. There's absolutely no denying that. So I really like the thought process here to help out our young quarterback truly as much as we can moving forward. And I thought they did a solid job of that in the 24 draft by bringing in Bo Nix, his former college teammate, and Troy Franklin, and of course Audric Estime in the 4th round. But I really like Luther with the 5th overall pick. Courtland Sutton's future at this time is a little up in the air, and if you can get a player like Luther at number 5 overall, I'm all for it. Now, with the Commanders at number 6 overall, I love Will Johnson here. Will Johnson is a 6'2" corner. He is a very, very good player. 7 interceptions over the last 2 years. And per PFF, he had an NFL passer rating of just 29 when targeted in 2023. He has the height, he has the speed, the ball skills are there. And Will Johnson right now projects to be just a good long-time NFL corner, and we're going to obviously get more into the Michigan defensive draft. We'll just go ahead and select the Cardinals pick here at pick 7, which will be Mason Graham. But there's a reason that Michigan won the national championship this year, as simple as that sounds. There's going to be more players from the Michigan team selected. A little spoiler later in the first round, but we're talking about Will Johnson and Mason Graham, who was along the interior. Guys, this team was absolutely loaded. Now, Will Johnson going to the Commanders, it would be simple. You have to figure out a way to stop, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and now Malik Neighbors. You have to figure out a way to stop these guys. Now, I wouldn't mind Tetro McMillan here, but I think Will Johnson as a corner, I think you're better off drafting a corner and hoping for a receiver in round 2, because I don't think the corner caliber you're going to have in round 2 would be the same as the receiver caliber you're going to have in round 2. So Will Johnson, top 6 pick, love that for the Commanders. Now, with Mason Graham going to the Cardinals, this to me makes it's just a great fit all around. Jonathan Gannon loves building through the trenches, and we saw that in the 24 draft. We saw them take Darius Robinson with their 1st round pick. We saw them make a statement and take Tip Ryman in the top 100, and it's because the Arizona Cardinals want to play I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you football, and I think Mason Graham would absolutely fall in line with that. And he would also improve their interior defensive line a lot. Now, with the Vikings here at pick 8, this to me is a dream scenario for them. Dayon Walker, for anyone who may not know, he is 6'6", 348. And he's not just... Now, whenever you hear the 348, he's not just a big 348, I can hardly move type guy. He is athletic. He had over 50 pressures in the SEC this year at 348 pounds. And as long as he doesn't fall off a cliff this year in terms of production, I would be shocked with that height, that weight, and his play style if Dayon is not a top 10 to 15 pick. A top 10 to 15 pick next year. If you could have Dayon Walker take up the middle of that defense in a Brian Flores coach defense, and you walk out of the 24 and 25 first round with J.J. McCarthy, Dallas Turner, and now Dayon Walker, when you were rumored at a point to trade all of those picks for just Drake May, that would be a huge win in terms of setting the Minnesota Vikings up for success. So I like the Dayon Walker pick a lot. Now, here's an interesting pick with the Raiders on the clock. You can obviously see that they need a quarterback, and this is where Shedeur Sanders comes off the board. Now, we're obviously going to be reviewing this a year from now, but I like all of the moves the Raiders are doing, but I rightfully have questions with Gardner Minshew and with Aiden O'Connell at the quarterback position, and I think naturally that will limit what they're able to do in the 24 season. I don't think there's anybody denying that the Raiders will have to get a quarterback next year. So that pick to me is pretty simple. I mean, you have to get a quarterback at one point in time. So I like Shedeur Sanders to the Raiders. Now, just because he is Deion's son does not mean he's as athletic as Deion, but Shedeur he's a mobile pocket passer is how I would describe his game. And I think his game will translate very well to the NFL level. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks, I like what they did in the first round this year. They took Byron Murphy, and I like what they did in the third round by taking Christian Haynes. They get bigger and stronger in the trenches, and with head coach Mike Macdonald, we're still going to focus on the defensive side of the ball. Now, with first round picks a year out, there's going to be a little bit of projection here. PFF currently has this player at 23 on their big board, but I am going to be giving the Seahawks edge rusher JT Tuimoloau, and for me, it's pretty simple. I like JT a lot. I think his game will translate very favorably to the NFL level, and Ohio State is notorious for having great pass rushers, and they are notorious for having, or for players having great hands with whether it's, swim move, whether it's an arm over, whether it's, speed to power, whatever the move may be. And I think with another year of JT under the Ohio State coaching, I think he's going to boost his stock, and the same thing applies to Jack Sawyer, by the way, who we will soon be discussing for much of the same reasons. But JT really got the best of New York Jets offensive tackle Olu Fashanu on a couple of reps during the 2023 game between Penn State and Ohio State. And there was one move in particular where JT did a move that I haven't seen. Again, I mean, I haven't seen a player be able to pull it off this smoothly in one rep, where he kind of like faked a club initially to Olu, and then while in the same motion, it was kind of like a fake, like over the top, and then just a straight uppercut right to him. And I mean, he forklifted Olu with one arm, like just straight back. And I mean, Olu didn't give up a sack, but I mean, he was forced back by a couple steps. And I think if you give JT another summer and another fall to really perfect his craft, I would be surprised if he's not an upper half first round pick in 2025. Now, with the Saints on the clock, I have a lot of concerns about the Saints moving forward, but I thought they had a solid 2024 draft. They, of course, took Talisi Fuaga and Kool-Aid McKinstry with their top two picks. Thought they got two long-term starters out of that class, but the player we are going with here is going to be a massive upgrade to the receiver room, and it's Tetro McMillan from Arizona. Now, there's a lot of projection and a lot of things that can go wrong in 1 year with this comp, but I really think in terms of watching him on tape, he reminds me kind of a blend of Mike Evans and Rome Odunze with where his game is right now. I love McMillan's game, and again, barring just free fall in terms of his draft stock, I can't imagine that NFL teams don't love his game too. Obviously, the 2025 receiver class is not going to be as loaded as the 2024, but I mean, there's two great receivers with Luther Burden and Tetro McMillan in the top 10 to 15 picks, and I like his game a lot. And pairing him with Chris Olave, whether it's Derek Carr, whether it's Spencer Rattler, whether they do something else at the quarterback position, is trying to set your guy up for success. Now, for anyone wondering, this is where Travis Hunter comes off the board. There's going to be a lot of questions of whether or not Travis plays DB or receiver at the NFL level. Ultimately, I think he is better suited to be a DB in the NFL level, or at the NFL level rather. And it's a pretty simple pick here. I mean, Travis is a very, very good athlete. He's a very good corner. His tape shows that. He's also a good receiver, but I think Travis is a better defender than he is an offensive player. So the Bucks get a first-round corner with Travis Hunter, and I don't really think the Bucks need a whole lot of help on offense. And maybe in the trenches a little bit, but I don't think the value really applies to where they currently are. And I also love their most recent first round pick of Graham Barton, but I think Travis Hunter going to the Bucks it'd be right place, right fit, and I think Travis Hunter would ultimately thrive in Tampa. The Indianapolis Colts are on the clock, and they did not address corner until way late in the 2024 draft. They didn't address until the 6th round when they took a corner from Marshall. So we are going to give them Tacario Davis from Arizona. I think Davis makes a lot of sense for the Colts. I mean, he's 6'4", he's a big corner. Ballard loves his big corners. He took Juju Brents from Kansas State in the 2023 draft. I hope Juju works out, by the way. I liked him a lot coming out of K-State, but I think this is just a big corner that Ballard would love. I think it's a good scheme fit, and I think Indy, especially like we've said before, you draft to beat your division, to win your division, and I think Indy, I mean, guys, that division is not getting any weaker. They have to draft to try and defend the other almighty teams in their division. Now, and by the way, I still think the Colts can compete this year, and they are kind of one of my big sleepers entering the year, and I like their future a lot. But anytime a 6'4" corner staring you right in the face, why not go get them, especially one like Tacario Davis. Now, with the Steelers on the clock, we've said throughout this that there is going to be some projection, and I think that this player is going to have a solid 2024 season. There were times during the 23 season where his receivers wouldn't get open, and it was very frustrating at times to just see him kind of just stand there in the pocket. And I mean, he was only a true sophomore, he was only 19 years old, and he still threw 25 touchdowns to 2 interceptions as a true sophomore. He's still, I mean, they still won double-digit games as, when he was a true sophomore. I think he's going to take a step this year. Drew Aller is 6'5", 240, absolutely has NFL size, and like I said, I think he's going to take a step this year, and I think that Pittsburgh's going to fall in love with him. They're gonna everybody's going to be taking note of Drew Aller this fall, but especially Pittsburgh, given the same state and everything. And Russell Wilson at this point is really at best a wild card. And if you had a rookie Drew Aller in a situation that the Steelers have with both running backs, with George Pickens, with Roman Wilson, with Pat Freiermuth, and now with their solidified offensive line, I think Aller going to the Steelers is a higher possibility than some diehard Pitt fans would probably like to admit. Now, with the Rams on the clock, Rob Havenstein's getting older. I liked what they did a lot throughout the 2024 draft, especially by bringing in Verse and Braden Fisk. The only thing I really didn't like was trading a future second to move up to get Braden Fisk. But anyway, if it works out, no one's going to care. But look, Verse, Fisk, they addressed the defensive line. Now we're going to address the offensive line. Emory Jones from LSU, I think he makes a lot of sense. He took a step in 23, and I think he'll take another step this year. Now, with the Jags on the clock, they had one of my favorite first-round picks this past year, or just last week, I guess you could say. They traded back. They got an extra 3 and an extra 4 next year from the Vikings to move back 6 spots, while still bringing in Brian Thomas Jr. I thought that was phenomenal, just general managing, if you will, by Trent Baalke. Now, at pick 16, like we said with the Colts, you have to draft to beat your division. I think Jacksonville has addressed the trenches enough, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And with a corner like Ben Morrison from Notre Dame staring you in the face, I mean, he has 9 interceptions over the last 2 years. And in 2022, he had an opposing passer rating of just 29 when targeted. So I like this pick a lot for the Jags. And 9 interceptions doesn't happen by accident. You might get a year where you have 5 interceptions, and then if that's an outlier year, then you might go back down to 1 or 0, or maybe even 2 the following year. But if you have 9 interceptions over 2 years, generally that doesn't happen by accident. I mean, he's a ball magnet. He's a good corner, and if Morrison has another solid year, he probably will be a first-round pick next year, I would say pretty comfortably. Now, with the Browns on the clock, this to me is just, we're gonna help Jim Schwartz out here in a big way. This is going to be one of my favorite players entering the 2025 draft process. It's Penn State's Abdul Carter, a 6'3", 250. He can play anywhere naturally because of his size, because of his physical abilities, also because of his number, also because of where he went to college or goes to college. There's going to be a lot of comparisons to Micah Parsons. I mean, that's just the way that it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of comparisons to Micah Parsons. Now, I don't think Abdul plays anything like Micah, but there's going to be a lot of comps there. And I like Abdul Carter a lot. And I think really with him going to a Jim Schwartz coach team, he gets to play behind everybody that the Browns have, like Miles, like Sedarius, even next to JOK. I mean, if the Browns can retain JOK and have Abdul out there on the field, I mean, this will be sideline to sideline for both linebackers. And nobody's going to want, I mean, nobody wants to step up and play the Browns now because of just how, good they are defensively, but this would be kind of just a cherry on a cherry on top for the Browns defense. Now, for as good as the Bears draft was this past year, and it was, I loved what they did. Caleb Rowe, I mean, you got a quarterback and wide receiver, one of the future. Austin Booker is a development guy. He was a 5th-round pick for a reason. You cannot enter the season and expect Austin Booker to play opposite of Montez Sweat and just absolutely expect him to have just, a 7 or 8 sack rookie season. So the guy we are going to go with here is Nick Scourton from Purdue. He had over 40 pressures last year for the Boilermakers. He's really good speed to power. And what I like about Nick is, or at least what's going to be a positive for him, is we're kind of, as we get further from COVID, we're going to have more 20, 21-year-olds, or at least players turning 21 as rookies. And Nick was born in late August of 2004. So for as good of a year as he just had with Purdue, he did that at 19 years old, and a young 19 years old, because again, his birthday's in late August. So we're talking about a guy that showed elite flashes and elite potential with another full year to get better. And I mean, at this point, I would be shocked if Nick is not a 1st-round pick. I think teams are going to fall in love with the height, weight, speed. I think he will test very well when his combine rolls around. And like I said, he's only going to be a young 21 during his rookie season. And especially if you compare him opposite of Montez Sweat, I think that's going to be a good all-around pick for the Bears. Now, next up is the Los Angeles Chargers. This kind of goes back to, like we just said with Nick, younger prospects. Colston Loveland had over 600 yards as a tight end at 19 years old. Obviously, there is the Harbaugh connection. And guys, this Michigan team this past year was just unreal. I mean, Colston Loveland have 600 yards as a 19-year-old tight end in the Big Ten on a national championship winning team. Again, as long as he doesn't fall off, he's going to be a top 40 pick. I mean, he had a great year last year, and the Chargers are going to need a tight end. And I know there was a lot of, the Chargers could draft Malik Neighbors at 5 this past year. Ultimately, they went with Joe Alt. But I love the possibility of having both Ladd McConkey and Colston Loveland on the same team. So I like the pick there. I like the fit. And that's kind of, we're trying to marry positions here with team needs and also project a little bit in the future. So it's not an exact science a year out, but this is what we're going for. Now, with the Texans on the clock, I think they will go interior defensive line. I was kind of surprised they didn't at least trade up from where they were selecting in the 2nd round before that run of interior defensive line that started with Ruka Roro and then Johnny Newton followed. And I was just kind of surprised that they stuck and stayed where they were, especially with the capital they have. But we're going to go with Kenneth Grant here. If you want to go with Howard Cross, be my guest. But we're ultimately going to go with Kenneth Grant. He's 6'3", 340. He rarely misses tackles, and he actually had 3.5 sacks this past year. And guys, the interior defensive line for Michigan this past year, Kenneth Grant, Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham. I mean, come on. I mean, there's NFL offensive lines that wouldn't want to deal with that, let alone interior college offensive lines every week. So Kenneth Grant, I think, would be a dream fit for the Texans at pick 20. Now, with the Jets at pick 21, I had a tough time, or I didn't know where to put Malachi Starks. I was thinking maybe the Browns at 17, but Malachi Starks to me is a modern day DB. He can play nickel, he can play safety. He is a modern day prototype DB. And when you can play both of those positions at a high level like Malachi did for the Bulldogs in 2023, I just have a hard time believing that he's not going to find his way into the top 32 next year. I mean, there's so much that goes into playing both at slot, both at safety, and for Malachi to be able to play both and as well as he did, Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas will like that a lot. So I like the fit there for Malachi. Now with the Falcons up here, I thought they were going to go with Dallas Turner at pick 8 this year. Ultimately, they did not. We obviously know who they went with. We're not going to do that again. We're going to go with edge Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. Jack, to me, all around, really, really good edge prospect. Can play the run, can absolutely get after the quarterback. I think the only thing you worry about with Jack Sawyer is, can he do both of those at an elite level? Can he go from good to great? That's kind of the only thing that I think you would worry about. But I think Jack Sawyer, I thought Jack was going to be a top 40 player this year, and we saw Chop Robinson go 21 overall. I didn't think Jack was going to be too far behind him, so I don't think 22 next year is unreasonable for him. Now, with the Dolphins on the clock, we're going to give them what is effectively a Christian Wilkins replacement. We're going to go with Howard Cross. He has great power. He's 6 foot, 290 pounds. Now, the only thing that will worry me a little bit with Howard Cross, especially in the 25 draft, is he's an older prospect. He's been in college for years now, and obviously when there is a lot of potential from young players, and there's 20 and 21-year-old prospects, are you going to want a 24-year-old prospect at the same position when you know that potential is a lot less than those 20 and 21-year-olds? That's the only thing that's going to worry me. I still think Howard Cross will be a solid prospect next year. But the Dolphins definitely, they do need help on the interior defensive line. I think they're more than fine at edge, especially after this draft. But I think they will need help on the interior defensive line. And what also has to be remembered is Christian Wilkins was an older prospect back in his draft class back in 2019. So I think Howard would be the Dolphins' first-round pick at this point in time. Now with the Packers up, they took Jordan Morgan in the first round. They took Edge Cooper in the second round. Surprised they did not draft Cooper DeJean, to be completely honest. We're going to give them a quarter, though. We're going to go Jabbar Muhammad, and it's pretty simple. Whether you think J.J. McCarthy is the long-term answer, you still have Justin Jefferson in the division. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown in the division. You have DJ Moore. You have Keenan Allen. You have Rome Odunze, Jordan Addison, potentially Jamison Williams if he pans out. There's a lot of players to defend in your division alone. So draft a corner. You can never go wrong drafting a corner in today's NFL with as much as teams throw the football. Jabbar Muhammad's a good prospect. It probably will be a team need for the Packers next year, and I think it'd be a good fit. Now with the Cowboys up, I have to be honest, I was tempted to keep Quinn Ewers in state and have him go to the Cowboys because Dak Prescott's free agency is something we don't know next year. We don't know what's going to happen. But ultimately, we went with a guy that I thought would have been a top 45 or 50 pick this year in Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Egbuka to me is just an absolute technician of a route runner. I like his game a lot. He had over 1,000 yards for the Buckeyes in 2022. I was pretty surprised to see him go back to school. Now, I will say in Egbuka's case that I definitely think there's some... Jealousy is not the right word. That's not what I'm saying. But I think there's going to be all right, let's get Marv out so I can show what I can truly do type, and I think that Egbuka thought, he was going to be a top 40 pick this year. And I think he internally at least would probably be thinking that, when I show that I can be the guy that I can boost myself into the top 15 of a class next year. I like his game a lot. And I think he is going to be, honestly, pretty bust-proof at the NFL level. I'd be surprised if he's not a 800 or 900-yard guy consistently in the NFL, even during his rookie season. Now, with the Eagles up, just a classic Howie Roseman we're going to sit and pick. Now, I know the immediate thought is going to be, well, Howie Roseman doesn't take linebackers in the first round, but I think Harold Perkins is going to be far too good of an athlete to pass up at 26. I think the Eagles will need linebacker. I hope Jeremiah Trotter Jr. works out, but there are some limitations in his game. There's a reason he was not selected until the 5th round, but Harold Perkins, great prospect for the Eagles, and I can't do a mock draft without HP going in the first round. He's a good prospect from LSU, and I think it's a good fit there. Now, with the Lions up at pick 27, I loved what they did by bringing in Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw in the first 2 rounds this year. I was kind of surprised they didn't go after edge. I thought there was a chance that if Chris Braswell was there with their second round that they would draft him, but the Bucs took him right before, a couple picks before. But we're going to go with Ashton Gillott from Louisville. It's pretty simple. Aiden Hutchinson needs needs a Batman to his Robin, or wait, needs a Robin to his Batman. Sorry, I said that wrong. He needs a Robin to his Batman. First round edge at the end. Hopefully he works out, and I think it fills a need that will probably still be there 1 year from now. Look, we saw Brad Holmes certainly address the cornerback position this offseason, whether it was the top 2 picks, whether it was Carlton Davis. I think he'll get his guy next year in the first round. Now, with the Cincinnati Bengals, this is my thought process here was what might be a need, what would be a good pick for them, what would be, kind of BPA while still filling a need, because the Bengals a lot of the time don't make just outlandish splashy picks just for the sake of making them, and I thought Kevin Winston Jr., a safety from Penn State, made a lot of sense for them. He's an all-around great safety prospect. He's 6'2", he played really, really good football down the stretch for Penn State in 2023, and I think, on the Bengals back end, I think it'd be a really, really good fit for them. And I liked what they did in the 24 draft by bringing in Amarius Mims and Chris Jenkins. So we're gonna protect the back end and go Kevin Winston. Now with the Bills up here, we're going corner Denzel Burke. Like we've said with a lot of other AFC teams, nobody is ever going to say, look, we're good on corner. The Bills unfortunately whiffed on Kaiir Elam a couple years ago. At least it seems that way, as he was a healthy scratch multiple times during his second season, which is never a good thing. I think Denzel's game is solid. I think he can be a solid CB2 at the NFL level, and I think it will fill a need, especially now that you have Drake May to defend. There's a chance that you have another year in 25 of Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and Malachi Corley to defend. So I think Denzel Burke would fill a need for the Buffalo Bills. Now, with the Ravens, this was, again, a little bit of a projection pick, but I like Landon Jackson, the pass rusher from Arkansas, and I thought there was a chance he was going to declare this year. I started to watch his tape back in December. Ultimately, he went back to Arkansas, but he's 6'7", 280, and I think Baltimore would be a good spot for him. You get the 5th-year option with Landon. You get just an absolute freak height, weight. I can't imagine his 40 is going to be all that fast because he is 6'7", 280. That's a lot of human being to move around, if you will. But whenever there's just an athlete like this, I like the idea of the Ravens going after him, and I like the idea of them molding him. And by the way, Landon's not a bad football player. This isn't just some guy off the streets. He played good football last year in the SEC, and I think it'd be a good fit for them. I know they just picked up Odafe Oweh's 5th-year option, but you could always use another pass rusher and corner, and I like this fit for the Ravens a lot. And the Ravens just selected 2 corners in Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa, so I didn't want to give them another corner after that, but I like Landon Jackson to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, with the 49ers on the clock, I was admittedly very surprised that they took Ricky Pearsall with 31. I don't think Ricky's a bad prospect. I personally would have preferred Xavier Legette for them in that offense. I would have preferred Adonai Mitchell, but anyway, look, hopefully it works out a year from now, and hopefully Ricky makes me look like an idiot with that comment. But one position that I don't think is deniable that the 49ers need is offensive tackle. I like Josh Simmons from Ohio State. I like Ernest Green from Georgia, but ultimately we are going with Jonas Savaiinaea from Arizona. You're filling a need. You're getting a big boy to protect Brock Purdy, who will be entering the final year in his rookie deal, and who knows, by this time next year, maybe Brock Purdy has a long-term contract extension. Who knows? But I still like the idea of the 49ers going in the trenches. Now, this pick for Kansas City, there's a lot of routes you could go. I don't think receiver is one of them after drafting Xavier Worthy in the first round, and ultimately I do think Marquise Brown will have a solid year for them. So what we're going to do, I know they just took Jared Wiley, but he's a 4th-round pick for a reason. He wasn't a top 40 pick. He wasn't a top 50 pick. He wasn't, hopefully this guy's he's absolutely going to work out. It's a dart throw. We're going to go with tight end Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame and hope that we have the replacement for Travis Kelce. I know Travis just signed an extension, but he'll be 35 this fall, and obviously Travis isn't going to play forever. Now, for the first time in a couple years, obviously because the Browns traded for Deshaun back in 2021, I want to say it was at this point, we have all 32 teams selecting, so that is going to wrap up today's mock. Now, whenever you do a way like we said with the Browns, with the way too early mocks over the past few years, not every team has been picking in the way too early mock. So for now, at least, obviously we expect there to be trades next year for a team to trade out of the first round, but every team right now is selecting in the first round. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the way too early mock draft. And if you did, please like and subscribe, as each helped the channel tremendously. And we are trying to get to 150K subs before the start of the 2024 NFL season. That's going to wrap up today's video. And until next time, be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.